One of my favorite things about sewing is the freedom to create clothing that both perfectly fits your body and your style. I found this top on Pinterest and loved the look of it and decided to have a go making it myself. So today I'm bringing you along with me as I attempt to recreate this lovely piece. I found this beautiful floral fabric when I was out thrifting a few months ago. It has the perfect vintage look to it for this piece. For the pattern, I'm using one I created for a dress I made a little while ago and just adjusting it so that it will work for this top. I also made up this collar pattern and I'm really excited to see how it turns out. I really wanted to have a nice puffy sleeve for this top, so I tweaked my sleeve pattern just a little bit as well. Prepping the fabric to cut takes such a long time that usually by the time I'm finished, I don't have any time left to do any sewing, and this time was no exception. I also ended up making a few mistakes when cutting the pattern, which added some extra time. The next day, I picked up where I left off and finished cutting out the last few pieces of the pattern. For the gather at the bottom, I cut out a strip that is 1.5 times the width of the bodice by 11 centimeters. I used my water erasable pen to transfer all the markings from my pattern to my fabric. Before I start putting my front and back pieces together, I'm going to deal with the darts. I find the markings I transferred over earlier and pin the darts together. Then I stitch them in place, only backstitching at the end. I tie off the threads at the beginning where I didn't backstitch. and bring my pieces over to the ironing board. I press the back darts away from each other towards the sides, and my front bust darts I press down. I didn't do any waist darts on the front pieces because I didn't want it to be too form-fitting. Now I'm ready to start assembling my top. I place my front pieces on my back pieces right sides together and pin them at the shoulders. Then I stitch them together. I'm using my serger to overlock the edges to keep them from fraying. To secure the ends of my threads, I use an embroidery needle and thread the loose ends back through the stitches, cutting off any excess. I give it a press with my iron, pressing the seams towards the back. Next up, I'm going to do the sleeves. I set my sewing machine to the longest stitch length and sew 2 rows of gathering stitches between the notches, skipping back stitching and leaving a tail of thread at the end. Grabbing the bobbin threads at the back, I gently pull the fabric and gather it together along the threads until it's the desired length. Once that's done, I'm ready to attach it to the armhole of my top. I match up the notches and pin it in place, adjusting my gathers as needed. Then I stitch my sleeve to my top. out all my gathering stitches before taking it over to my serger. Then I bring it over to my iron and press the seams towards the sleeve. Now it's time to sew the sides of the top together. I pin the side seams of the top and the sleeves together and stitch them in place. Go over the edges with my serger and then give it a good press. To hem my sleeves, I fold the edge in by 1 centimeter and give it a press with my iron. I then fold and press it in by 1 centimeter a second time. And then stitch it in place. The original top had this frilly detail to the bottom of the sleeve. I'm going to achieve this by using some elastic. I originally tried doing this with shearing elastic, but I found it to be quite uncomfortable to wear. I cut out a strip of fabric that is a few inches longer than the circumference of my sleeve. I'm going to use this to create a channel for my elastic to go through. I fold it in half and press it with my iron. Then I open it up and press the edges in towards the center. I then place it inside my sleeve where I want the elastic to sit and pin it in place. I stitch it to the sleeve, leaving an opening of 1 or 2 inches for me to feed the elastic through. I grab my elastic and measure the widest part of my arm, making sure it's not too tight or too loose. And cut 2 pieces in this length. Using a safety pin, I feed the elastic through the casing in my sleeve, pinning the other end to keep it from slipping into the casing. Then I stitch the ends of my elastic together and stitch the opening I left closed, encasing the elastic inside the sleeve. I found this ribbon on Amazon. It came in a pack of 10 and I thought it would work so well along the edge of the collar. I'll have a link down below if you're interested. First off, I sewed 2 rounds of gathering stitches along the ribbon. I cut my ribbon at 1.5 times the length of the outer edge of the collar. Then I gather it till it matches with the collar and give it a press so the gathers will hold nicely in place. For the collar, I'm adding some white scrap fabric so it won't be too flimsy. Usually you would use interfacing, but I had this on hand and figured it would do the job nicely. I put it on the wrong side of one set of collar pieces and pin both sets of collar fronts to collar backs. Then I stitch them together, overlock the edges, and press the seams towards the back. Just before pinning the ribbon on, I remembered I had to fold and stitch the raw edges of my ribbon as well to give it a cleaner look and so it won't fray or come apart. Then I pinned it onto one of the collar pieces and put the other collar piece on top, sandwiching the ribbon in between them. Then I stitched it in place. I clipped the excess fabric on the corners and then went around the entire edge, making little snips along it, being careful not to cut into my stitches. This will help the collar lay nice and flat when I turn it right side out. Then I flip it right side out and give it a good press. I need my facing ready first before I attach the collar to the top. I overlock the outer edges and then stitch the fronts onto the backs. Overlock the seam edges and press the seams towards the back. I grab my collar and pin it right sides up to the neckline of the top, matching the notches. Then I stitch it in place, trying to stay inside the seam allowance so my stitches won't show later. I get my facing and pin it right sides together to the collar. Then I stitch it in place. I spend a little extra time pressing the facing to make sure it stays tucked away inside the top to give that clean finished edge. I also like to do a couple stitches by hand to attach the facing to the shoulder seams to ensure it stays put. For the gather at the bottom, I grabbed the strip of fabric I cut out for it and pressed one of the long edges in by 1 centimeter twice, like I did for the sleeve hem. Then I stitch it in place. I sew 2 rows of gathering stitches along the opposite end and gather the fabric till it matches perfectly with my top. It was at this point I realized I also needed to hem the sides as my facing ended up being a little too short, so I quickly pressed and stitched it in by 1 centimeter twice, just like I did for the bottom. I don't know what happened with my facing, but it was a little bit longer than the top, just not long enough, so I folded and stitched it behind itself so I wouldn't have to cut into any of my stitches. All of that out of the way, I pin the gather to the top and stitch it in place. I pull out my gathering stitches, overlock the edge, and give it a press with my iron. All that's left to do is add the buttons. The original has a sort of pattern going on with the buttons, and I really liked this detail. After playing around with some options, I decided to do 4 sets of 2 buttons going down the front. I lay the buttons roughly how I want them to be and then measure to make sure they're evenly spaced out. I mark the top and bottom of the hole with my water erasable pen, using the button as a guide. For my machine, I change the stitch length down until it's in the green zone, which is meant for making buttonholes. I change the stitch width to 4 and switch to the button function. My machine has 3 functions for buttonholes, one for the right side of the hole, one for the left, and one for the top and bottom. I start at the top mark I made and stitch till I reach the mark below it. Since I'm not backstitching, I finish off by switching the length to 0 and sew a couple still stitches to keep my stitches from coming undone. I find it so satisfying ripping open the buttonholes with the seam ripper. You just have to be careful you don't accidentally cut into your stitches. Once I have my buttonholes all done, I lay the top out and mark where my buttons should go by making a little dot in the middle of my buttonhole into the fabric underneath. Stitching all those buttonholes on by hand was a bit of work. Once I was finally done, my top was finished. I'm so happy with how this top turned out. The fact that I was able to recreate something from my Pinterest board was so satisfying, and I love the sweet vintage look this top has. The fact that it is one of a kind makes it that much more special. Thank you so much for coming along with me through the creation of this piece. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and be sure to subscribe if you enjoy sewing videos like this one. Plans for future projects are already in the works, and I can't wait to share them with you. Until next time.